Virginia Korte. I am your city council member sitting today on your city council and have been an advocate for bringing forward a non-discrimination ordinance for the lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual community, LGBT. And that is why we're here today, to talk about what that means and what that means to Scottsdale. It means a lot, and it means a lot to us that you're here to listen. So thank you for that. I had the distinct pleasure of introducing our moderator today, and I've asked, she gave me no information. So Angela Huey, so I asked, I asked some friends, if you were to introduce Angela, what would you say? I said, well, good luck. Good luck with that. No. Angela is, number one, I have been fortunate and am very grateful to have been able to work with Angela for almost a year now. She is a visionary. She's a salesman. And coming from an ex-car dealer, that's big, because, I can peddle a Chevy, and she sells equality. And that's a lot harder to sell than a Chevy. She is the founder and CEO of One Community, and has a magnificent obsession for inclusivity and diversity for the state of Arizona. Angela? Excuse me.
So thank you, Virginia. And one of the things that's so cool about having a magnificent obsession for equality is you get to meet really, really cool people like Virginia Korte, who I have to tell you, as we move through this conversation, this is about each and every one of us in the room. It's about our friends and family and our neighbors, and it's about the vision we all have for a state that is welcoming and truly open for business to everyone. So I had a speech prepared thinking that there was going to be a podium that I was going to have a hard time seeing over, and I'm very happy that I get to sit down and just kind of lean up in my chair this morning so my feet actually touch the ground. So I'm going to go through just hit some of the important bullet points that were in my speech. So I want to thank, I'm very fortunate to be the co-chair of a rather new coalition, Competitive Arizona, along with my dear friend Sheila Clefthorne. Sheila, give everyone a wave. Sheila sits on the HRC National Board of Directors, and she has been a mentor and is a remarkable strategist and visionary, and most importantly, my partner in crime as we work together and collaboratively along with the other organizations that make up Competitive Arizona. And to tell you what Competitive Arizona is in a quick 30-second spiel, it's about 7 organizations, both local and national, who are committed to ensuring that we not only move forward with LGBT inclusive ordinances, that our end result is that the state updates its current laws in public accommodations, housing, and employment to ensure that everyone that lives and works and plays in the great state of Arizona is treated equally. So we're very excited about the work we're doing. So how many of you in this room have heard about the Unity Pledge? Awesome. Really thrilled with the Unity Pledge. To date, we've had over 1,300 businesses and organizations take the pledge that now represent over 500,000 employees. When we look at the member-based organizations, such as our friends at the Arizona Technology Council, our friends at the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, the amazing Kimberly Lanning, my dear friend from Local First Arizona, who was the first organization to sign the Unity Pledge. These organizations that also include the Scottsdale CVB and the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce and the venue that we're at today, now represent over 25,000 businesses that are located in the state of Arizona. And we're very proud that the City of Scottsdale, the City Council, voted unanimously in August of last year to take the Unity Pledge. And while we're proud of the public proclamation that the Unity Pledge is, we also know that taking the pledge is not enough. That a public proclamation that says that we welcome and accept everyone that works and lives and plays in the region is merely a proclamation. And what we need to do is we need to have laws that actually protect everyone in the great city of Scottsdale and throughout this great state of Arizona. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and I want to give you just a really quick update on where we're at with municipal ordinances, and then I'm going to introduce our awesome panel. So to date, Phoenix, Tempe, Tucson, and Flagstaff have all adopted LGBT inclusive ordinances. Phoenix, Tempe, and Tucson all get 100% on what is known as the HRC Municipal Equality Index. The issue before Scottsdale is its score in so many ways, as Scottsdale gets a 65. Other regions throughout Arizona get as low as a 36. So we have put ourselves in a position where we are not competitive, where we cannot attract and retain top talent. We'll talk about branding. But what I really want to do now is introduce this amazing panel. So Kimber Lanning is the Executive Director and Founder of Local First Arizona, the largest local business coalition in the nation, which is awesome. Give her applause, please. Kristen Jarniga is the Senior VP of the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, and Steven Zylstra is the President and CEO of the Arizona Technology Council. Each and every one of our panelists can talk to you today, both from a local and national level. And I want to start with Steve if I can, because Steve and the ATC have been very out front on issues of equality. In fact, since 2013, your public policy has been that we need to update the state's law to be inclusive of the LGBT community in public accommodations, employment, and housing. Tell us why, Steve.
So for the tech industry in Arizona, it's really a competitiveness issue. We are working to attract the greatest technology companies in the country and the greatest talent, the best and brightest minds. And to exclude a portion of our population just makes no sense. Equality makes sense. Even the Pledge of Allegiance says injustice for all. The tech industry is, by its very nature, very diverse and inclusive. I can tell you that companies that are looking to locate here from other areas balk at doing that after 1062. So our economic developers who are trying to attract companies here have that much more trouble just because of the perception that Arizona is not as inclusive as it needs to be. As the millennials are looking to relocate here, they just don't get it. They don't understand why there wouldn't be equality for all, especially in the workplace. So as I said, it's a competitiveness issue for the tech industry. We're going to continue to support this cause and others around providing equality for all in the workplace.
Thank you, Steve. And Kimber, Local First Arizona, didn't blink, signed the Unity Pledge way before this was an easy thing to do. You've been very out front on equality. Can you tell us why?
For a number of reasons, Angela, but I started Local First Arizona specifically because I felt we had way too many bright young people leaving Arizona. My background, I've had a small music store for 28 years and an art gallery for 16 years. And in those businesses, I dealt with the Valley's brightest. And I had to watch them go and do great things in somebody else's city. And I thought the most important thing I can do is better connect them to this place, make them want to stay here, start their businesses, raise their families. And in order to do that, we need to have a completely inclusive community that represents diversity in every sense of the word. And so really with Local First Arizona, that equality and inclusion is our top priority.
Thank you. And you've been a great partner since we opened our doors. And Kristen, let's come on. We're talking about tourism here. My goodness gracious. So real quick, the LGBT tourism community, $100 million business in the United States this year. We have $884 billion worth of buying power. I know that multiple CVBs are going after LGBT consumers, that we want folks to come and visit our fine hotels and eat at our awesome restaurants, and yet in 63% of the state, we can still be denied service when we get here. So how's that work for you?
So,
Not very well.
Well, answer that question. So it is an important market, and we have been marketing to the LGBT traveler for years. I mean, this is not a new market for our industry. We've recognized the spending power for a long time. The LGBT traveler is typically a very educated traveler, and they have a higher household income than a hetero traveler. So especially for Scottsdale as a luxury market, that's an important market to try and attract here. But more importantly, what our message is we need to be welcoming to all. If you're seen as unwelcoming in any way, it's not just the LGBT traveler that you're turning away, it's all of the people that have LGBT friends and relatives. When SB 1062 happened, I, of course, got an incredible flood of responses from people all over the country, and the vast majority were not LGBT. It was people saying, I don't feel comfortable coming to your state, because I would then put a picture of me smiling and being happy on my Facebook page, and it would offend my friends and family who you're not welcoming towards. So it's definitely not just about attracting the LGBT market, but it impacts all of our visitors when you're seen as possibly unwelcoming to anyone.
And I'm glad you bring that up. We call it the friends and family effect. And last year, one community unveiled the State of LGBTQ Arizona report, along with our friends and partners at the Raul Castro Institute, Univision, and Arizona State University. And my favorite slide was the slide that said 68% of our non-LGBT friends and 42% of our non-LGBT family members are directly aligned with the LGBT community, meaning if a region, just as you so eloquently pointed out, is not seen as welcoming to the LGBT community, you're not just not welcoming to us, you're not welcoming to our friends and family. And you know, we are fast approaching the 1-year mark of marriage equality in Arizona. We now have marriage equality throughout the United States, but again, talking to the bottom line in Arizona, $61.9 million will be added to Arizona's bottom line in the first 3 years of marriage equality. And of that, it's over $15 million that comes from our friends and family. So we certainly want to throw that welcome mat out.
And if I could just add on to that, because it's one of the statistics I pulled with the marriage equality coming up, it's really important that $9.5 billion will be spent in LGBT weddings. And another interesting statistic for my industry is 88% do not have their wedding in a place of worship. That means they're having them at resorts and hotels and other facilities that are spending great money. So that's a critical market coming up, and if we're not capturing it, we're really losing out.
I agree, and then I just heard that Arizona is a destination wedding spot. I didn't know that. We went to California. Maybe we should get another wedding here. Any excuse to celebrate.
Yeah,
Well, we went to California in 2008. It wasn't legal here. I'm like, oh, I'm in so much trouble. I'm going to hear of it. I see a bad email coming from Kimber.
I went to Hawaii. Does anyone blame me?
No. He gets off scot-free. Okay, so...
so much leakage occurring on this stage. Sorry.
So I want to go real quick. I want to talk about a recent Phoenix Business Journal article that announced that the greater Phoenix area lost 3,000 high-wage jobs due to concerns around education and diversity and inclusion. Steve, from a tech industry standpoint, are you hearing that diversity and inclusion, or the perception of Arizona not being inclusive, is the drum beating louder than it was in years past?
Well, I think it's become part of the national dialogue, and it's certainly part of the Arizona dialogue. I just recently had a lunch with a board member from Intel and from Avnet, and you know, they solved this problem a long time ago. Those companies have their own internal policies, and that's fortunate. But we're trying to attract other Intels and Avnets to the region, and they're appalled when they find out that at least a subset of Arizona is not open to inclusiveness. So it's as I said early on, it's a competitiveness issue, and the biggest challenge that technology companies have today is attracting talent. And as I said, this new generation of workers just doesn't even get it, right? Equality is just part of their DNA. And you know, they're not going to come to a place that they feel is not inclusive. So it's a critical issue for the industry. If we're not able to attract the kind of talent that we need to grow the tech industry, we're going to be left behind.
I really appreciate your comments there. So that same Business Journal article mentioned 4 cities that we really compete for when it comes to high-wage, high-talent jobs. So Austin, Dallas, Denver, and Salt Lake City. And earlier, when we started this discussion, I mentioned the HRC Municipal Quality Index. So Austin gets 100%. Dallas gets a 91%. They have an LGBT inclusive ordinance. So does Austin. Denver gets an 89. And Salt Lake City in Utah gets an 87. And again, we're sitting in a region that unfortunately gets a 65. So that's a D, no matter how you slice it. But the great news is we can do something to get that score up should the council decide to move forward with an LGBT inclusive ordinance. So I want to switch over to Kimber for a second. You know, she's such, I think that you really are the spokesperson for Arizona and why Arizona is great. And for as long as I've known you, you've always said we need to do a better job telling our stories. And you recently brought the BIA conference into the greater Phoenix area, but you had a hard time getting folks to come here, and I was hoping you could share that story.
It's actually the second time I've had a hard time getting people to come here. The first time was around when SB 1070 happened. I was hosting a music conference here of people in the industry, and they were going to boycott until I came up with the idea to do an entire week's worth of Latin jazz, Latin performance, and a celebration of Latino heritage, and they thought, okay, that we can do that. And again, as Kristen just mentioned, it's sort of, they loved the idea of coming to Arizona, particularly because the conference was in February. However, they were worried that by coming here, they were sending the signal that they were okay with what we were doing here. And so by having a weeks-long celebration of our Latino heritage, they felt comfortable in saying, well, we'll go to support that. The second time was just recently, the Bali conference, which came here in May, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. It is a forward-thinking organization that has everyone working on sustainability in every sense of the word, economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, so people who are on the cutting edge. And they announced that, to very lukewarm reception, that the conference was in Phoenix. We competed for it. I was able to convince them to put the conference here. And I had no idea I was going to spend 6 months on the phone trying to explain to people why they should come to Arizona. And the most powerful one that really stuck with me was a woman from Detroit who said, I have to tell you, she said, I called you because I wanted you to know that I've gone to the Bali conference every year for the last 10 years, and it moves all around the country. And she said, but I'm not coming this year because I hate your state. And, you know, you take someone who is deeply rooted here, and it's sort of like rip your heart out and throw it on the floor. And so I spent some time with her, and she said, I won't visit any state that doesn't have a Martin Luther King holiday. I said, well, we've had a Martin Luther King holiday since I was a little girl. And we had a long conversation about the way the media portrayed Arizona as not being celebratory of Dr. King. And at the end of the conversation, she said, she said, maybe Phoenix has more in common with Detroit than I ever thought. And she came, and I'm proud to say she loved it. And I have pages and pages and pages of feedback. I reached out to Bali and I said, I want to add a question to your follow-up survey, and that is, did this conference change your perception of the host city? And that gave me so much critical feedback of how people said we had no idea. We thought it was going to be this backwards, hateful place, and we came here and it was forward-thinking. We told people to just use the light rail. We put it right downtown. We utilized great historic buildings as well as Arizona State University buildings. And they had a fabulous time. They just could not believe that this is the Arizona they've been reading about. So it's critically important that we work harder. And again, I personally don't think it's about a brand. I think it's about we need to tell our stories better. We need to work harder to elect individuals that don't try to usher hate through our legislation.
Angela, can I add something?
Absolutely.
So the Tech Council worked very closely with the Phoenix Convention and Visitors Bureau in attracting an enormous event from San Francisco, the Materials Research Society. And the MRS has 7,000 or so scientists and PhDs who come to their event. They made the decision to come here, and then 1062 came, and all hell broke loose. A lot of their members were livid, and it took a great deal of effort for us to convince them that they have to give Arizona a chance for many of the same reasons Kimber mentioned. And this coming year, we're the host city to the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. We'll have 1,800 of the smartest kids in the world here. And we need to make sure that the impression that they leave with, because these are the leaders and future leaders in countries around the world, is a positive image of Arizona. if we don't do that, we'll continue to have the kinds of problems that Kimber experienced.
Well, and I agree with both of you, and you know, obviously, Arizona's brand has been in the headlines an awful lot lately. The governor is talking about rebranding Arizona, and there was, I think, an article late last week in the Business Journal that was, you know, it's pretty shocking when, you know, the headline is Arizona, it's a dry hate, and then I think the number one quote after that was, "We put the AZ in crazy." And so, you know, man, that gets me frustrated, and I'm like, Kimber's right, we need to do a better job telling our stories, but the reality is we are, I think, complicating this issue because our stories and the remarkable things that are happening here in this great state are one thing, but if we don't have policy in place that says that we truly are welcoming, if we continue to keep talking around issues of diversity and inclusion, if we continue to keep kicking the can on LGBT inclusive municipal ordinances, then I think our actions speak louder than our words, and we're not putting ourselves in a position to rebrand.
Just by way of telling our stories, I want to ask, how many of you have been in this room since the Martin Luther King vote and Evan Meacham era? In this room? How many of you in this room have been here? In this state. How many of you in this room have been here that long? Okay, so how many of you have been approached by somebody around the country thinking that we just flat out voted down a Martin Luther King Day holiday without knowing the whole story, that it was going to be a paid state holiday and we were going to replace President's Day? How many of you remember that as it actually was? Right? So that's not the story that was told. And when I explained to this woman in Detroit, she said, well, that's not what I read. And I said, well, welcome to the media in America today. And so it's, you know, we need to better tell our story and own that, because we've had several million people move to this state since then, and a lot of the newcomers don't even realize what was actually on that ballot. And we almost passed it to replace President's Day as a paid state holiday in its own right way back then.
So definitely we need to do a better job telling our story, but we also clearly have to be moving towards, you know, meaningful policies that are diverse and inclusive of everyone. So Kristen, let's talk about our tourism industry, right? So Arizona's #1 export is tourism. Scottsdale's #1 export is tourism. You and I were talking before we were crazy enough to sit up here and start this conversation about a conversation that I had recently had with a Scottsdale hotelier who said, you know, we can't quantify the amount of convention business that, in particular, Scottsdale and Phoenix has lost, that there are other stunning states that have remarkable golf courses, and there's just so many cases where Arizona's not getting the RFQ. How are your conversations in the travel industry when it comes to our brand and, you know, the belief that we're not inclusive?
Well, the reason we all care about tourism is for not just because we love our state and we love to talk positively about our state, but it's because it supports almost 200,000 jobs in our state. And whether or not you're involved in the tourism industry in any way, it's about $2.9 billion in tax revenues alone. So it keeps every single one of our household tax revenues down by over $1,000 a year. So whether or not you're involved in tourism, it does impact every single resident of our state in a positive way, and it pays for all of those services that we all rely on, which is why we want to attract tourism. So back to your question, you know, what Kimber was saying, perception is reality. Unfortunately, perception is reality, and people are going to believe a snippet that they hear on the local news, and they don't delve deeper into the story, and they make a snap decision, and that's going to be their perception of a destination. And we heard it right here on our stage. California, Hawaii, all of these other wonderful sunshine destinations, which we are already at a competitive disadvantage for just because of our tourism spending. We spend about, the general fund allocation for tourism in our state is $7 million a year. Hawaii, which everyone knows is a tropical paradise, everyone has a vision of Hawaii, right? Positive immediately. They spend $75 million a year. California just doubled their budget. They spend $100 million a year. Florida spends $100 million a year. Again, I'm just going to go back to our number, it's 7. And we don't have Disneyland and the cruise lines and all those other places that are adding to that dollar amount. So we're already at a disadvantage. We don't need additional deterrents for people to come here. It comes down to more of a business decision than anything politically for meeting planners who are planning conferences and events. It's a risk. It's a risk for them to plan a conference where their attendees may not come for whatever reason. It's a financial risk for them. And if there's so many other beautiful states that have sunshine and golf courses and resorts that don't have that risk attached to the event, that's where they're going to go. And it's not as much about politics for them oftentimes. It's because they can't be seen as taking a risk for their attendees.
May I add something?
Yeah.
So the media has again distorted, I think, the initiative that the governor recently announced called Rebranding. I think, having talked to the governor about this, he realizes that this state's brand has been tarnished by many of these pieces of legislation, some of which we talked about today. First of all, he's dedicated not to seeing any of those things come to his desk, and he has communicated that to the legislature. In addition to that, he, like all of us, realized that there are so many great things about Arizona that people don't know. As Kimber has said many times, we don't do a very good job of telling our story. And really, that's at the root of what the governor wants to do. He wants to do a better job, from the 9th floor of articulating the value proposition that is Arizona. So I think, again, the media made fun of that, but it's a very serious initiative, and it's one that we all should embrace, because we've just discussed all the reasons why it inhibits our ability to be competitive and successful at many of the things we're trying to do in business and tourism.
Thank you. And one more thing to finish up this is I think the reason why an ordinance is so critical is because, again, we all know that anyone's going to come to Scottsdale and they're going to be welcomed and they're going to have a great experience, or Phoenix when they get here, regardless of background or ethnicity or gender. Everyone's going to come here and have a wonderful time. We know that, and we continue to tell people that story in a positive way. But we don't have anything we can point to that's definitive, that guarantees it. And that's why these ordinances are important, because it gives us something in writing to point to that our elected officials, will support.
And I just wanted to dovetail on what Steve said. The type of thing that I believe we need to be doing, for example, we have so much innovation happening here in Arizona that we need to take our superstars who are doing incredible work that's well respected around, not only around the country, but around the world. And we need to strategically place them at conferences where intellectuals, forward-thinking, innovative people will be clustered. And we need to get them on stage. And we need to pay for them to get there. We need to pay for them as a state. This is an investment that would be great for all of us. And our only payback is that they need to proudly say they're from the state of Arizona. And if we had 25 of those smart people doing conferences for 2 years straight, we could change our image. And it wouldn't have to do anything with ads in magazines or anything. We need to get in the right room. The world has changed. Peer-to-peer discussion forms opinion much more so than any type of media buy. We need to get our smartest people in front of smart people around the country tomorrow, and it's a great investment.
So I totally agree with you. People sometimes ask me what drives me, and I say it's really the love of this great state. I love the state of Arizona so much, and it frustrates me when the stranger on the airplane asks you where you're from, and you're kind of like, I'm from Arizona, and because sometimes folks aren't not that nice. They say, what's wrong with you? And I know that we're a welcoming state, and there's nothing wrong with me, by the way. And so I just want to get to this place where we're all ambassadors, and when that stranger asks us where we're from, we say we're from the great state of Arizona. Where are you from? Quick story, I was back in some southern states last year doing a tour of Mississippi, Arkansas, and Alabama. And that was a very eye-opening experience. And in some ways, it was eye-opening in ways that I had not imagined. So when I was in Mississippi, I sat down with some LGBT business and community leaders. And first and foremost, if you go to Mississippi, they have the best Reuben sandwich I've ever had in my entire life. But what I heard from these business and community leaders really shocked me, and that was the first thing they said to me was, we are so tired of being compared to Arizona. And that was mind-blowing. it was a really good Reuben sandwich, but it wasn't quite that good. No, just joking. No, it was, I mean, there are just, the fact that these two states are consistently compared to one another is remarkable to me. Arizona we have so much convenience, we have just so much going on, and I mean no disrespect to Mississippi in saying that. It's just that it's remarkable that this is what comes to mind, that Arizona and Mississippi are in the same sentence, because you know, I have a great deal of Arizona pride, and I don't think that we should be, even with their good Reuben sandwich. And then I want to talk about what happens, the positive effects of, you know, adopting an LGBT inclusive non-discrimination ordinance. So Tempe has had theirs on the books since February of 2014, and I want to just read a little piece of this letter that the diversity office from Tempe sent to me. The City of Tempe is proud to announce and welcome Northern Trust. That was a $95 million deal, by the way, that one community and many of our community partners in this room helped them land. GoDaddy, Shutterfly, as new businesses in Tempe. These businesses have specifically stated that one of the important reasons they selected Tempe was for our progressive inclusionary practices and policies such as the ordinance and charter amendment. So there's a great deal of actual positive good that happens when we do enact and vote positively towards diverse and inclusive policy. It helps us rebrand, it helps us tell our story, and clearly it's helping us attract and retain top talent. And I want to talk about Northern Trust really fast. GPEC, the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, had met with them for 8 months, and they reached out. This was actually when I was in Mississippi, oddly enough. And they said, we're talking to a group, they're called Project Atlas, and they're very concerned about an LGBT talent base. Will you come talk to them? And I said, absolutely. And then Sheila was smart enough to figure out who Project Atlas was. It was Northern Trust. And she said, Northern Trust takes the HRC Corporate Equality Index. You know, they're a very, very conservative company. They get 100% on the Corporate Equality Index because what we realized was diversity and inclusion were their core issues. And so when we went into the meeting with GPEC, we didn't just come in with representatives from our LGBT community. We came in with top millennials, with folks from NABO, with folks from the Hispanic Chamber and the Black Chamber of Commerce and the Arizona Bridge to Independent Living, because people with disabilities were important to them. And we said, welcome to the great state of Arizona. And as the story goes, and this is Chris Camacho saying this, not me, when we left that meeting, Northern Trust, after 8 months of not saying that they would move to the region, made the decision to come here. Because we said that we are a diverse and inclusive community, and that if you give us a shot, we promise you that we will not let you down. But again, in large part, they chose to move to Tempe because they didn't think it was fair to be diverse and inclusive in the workplace and then ask their employees to live and recreate in a region that didn't share their core values. So this is meaningful stuff. And Steve, you know, from a technology standpoint, Apple's coming to town. I mean, you're out there fighting to bring high-tech, highway jobs in all the time. Intel has said that they're investing $300 million on diversity and inclusion. Do you think that enacting these ordinances helps you tell your story?
Well, it definitely does. I think, you know, ultimately, if there's a critical mass of cities and towns in this state that adopt these kinds of practices, I think will also send an important message to our legislative body that they need to do something at the state level as well. That's a hard road given the current politics in the state, but I think it's necessary. I think you'll note that a lot of these companies are located in places that have a high index. State Farm is another one that's located in Tempe. That's a 2 million square foot facility, and a lot of their innovation and research activities are going to be here in Arizona. They're building 3 of these across the U.S., one in Dallas, one in Atlanta, and one here. But the important stuff is going to happen here on the research and technology side. So you've heard the CEO of Intel recently commit to spend a great deal of money to make sure that that company is as diverse as it can possibly be. Technology companies are committing to this at the highest level, not just LGBT, but also gender equality. You know, part of that issue has to do with the pipeline. There's not enough women coming up through the pipeline. So these are critical issues to the future of our industry and to the future of Arizona's competitiveness.
You want to add anything?
Well, as the lobbyist for the state's tourism industry, we were down there, and Kimber knows, she's on our board of directors. We were down there at the onset of 1062 when that started to come through, and we were like Chicken Little. I was down there with all the legislators and senators and telling them that this was going to be even worse than SB 1070, because SB 1070, immigration is a very divisive issue. The country is basically split evenly, fairly on that topic, whereas this topic is pretty widely accepted. I mean, you saw the Supreme Court. Most people are not on the same page as discrimination on this topic in any way. So we were down there trying to explain that, and a lot of business leaders we tried to explain too, and they said, oh, no, don't worry, it's not going to be a big deal. The positives will offset the negatives. And then the good thing is that we had laid some groundwork behind the scenes and really warned people. So the second that hit and started to get media attention, we had some great business leaders, that stepped up. And Kimber, you were behind the scenes too the whole time beforehand, and step up. And we were able to act really quickly and really rally support. But I have certainly heard through the grapevine that with the Supreme Court passage of equal marriage, that we do expect additional legislation to be introduced because people are concerned about religious freedoms based on that. So again, we have a very supportive governor who does not want to see those kinds of things coming to his desk. So we have support in the governor's office this time around. However, we have been warned that could come up again. So again, having these foundations of city ordinances will really help us alleviate any negative media attention we might get from that.
Thank you. And Kimber was out front very early on, before this passed through the House and Senate. And Steve, your ATC letter, I think, had 150 businesses on it. So, I mean, seriously, we all owe them, both of them and their organizations, a debt of gratitude. They got out front. They were vocal, and they said that this is not the state that we want to be, a state that discriminates is not how we want to be known. And, Kimber's on a founding member of our Multicultural Advisory Board, and there was 5 of us that worked on the Open for Business to Everyone campaign. And those signs, thousands of them, still, remain throughout the state. People send me messages on a weekly basis saying that they saw another Open for Business to Everyone sign. But, again, I think we have to have policy put in place that matches this brand. Going back to what you were saying about this not being a divisive issue, I agree with you. There was a poll that was taken actually after 1062, and at that time, 72% of Arizonans mistakenly believed that we already had fully inclusive policy in place on a statewide level. So our job in this conversation, and as we work with wonderful municipalities throughout the state to enact LGBT inclusive ordinances, is really to educate everyday Arizonans on the fact that while we're not inclusive, we should be, and in doing so, we are really putting ourselves in a position where we can celebrate, respect, and protect everyone. We're putting ourselves in a position where we can attract and retain top talent, where we can stop losing millennials, where we can bring back tourism, and we can have a sustainable future in this great state. May I add anything to that? That was kind of a good end. So with that, it seems like we should pause. We want to open this up to the floor. If anybody has any questions, we have a mic over in the corner if we can answer any questions for anyone.
May I add something?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that Scottsdale is increasingly becoming an area where technology companies are locating. There are really 3 epicenters, one up here in the air park and now downtown Scottsdale. If you haven't noticed, the Galleria is now full of technology companies, and then at Skysong. So this is increasingly important to Scottsdale to get this right, because if they're going to benefit in the future from business attraction and talent attraction, it has to be perceived as a more inclusive city than it currently is.